Bill Gerencer grew up in Waterville, but for the last 45 years, he's made a living on or near the ocean. He's worked on a lobster boat, on trawlers, in restaurants, and for seafood wholesalers.
He knows the fishing industry inside and out and has written about his experiences in a new memoir called Working Waterfront, A Fish Tale. We picked up the story when Bill Gerencer was in his early 20s working on an offshore trawler in the Gulf of Maine. The hours were long, the work demanding, and he was hooked.
I love the job, I love the changes, I love being out in the elements all the time. It was a real connection to what's natural, the sunrises and the sunsets where there's nothing blocking the horizon, and you're in the middle of it all with a group of people that you're trusting your life with is almost addicting.
How long would you typically be out at sea when you were out working on the trawler?
6 to 8 days.
What were you fishing for?
Mostly, we call them ground fish, but they were cod, haddock, pollock, and then flatfish, Acadian redfish. We do gray sole, sea dabs, blackback flounders. You never knew what you were going to catch. It was, some days we'd come in with a boatload of cod, other days haddock, other days a lot of flounder, sometimes a little of this and that. So it was a great experience, and we saw a lot of different kinds of things come out of that net when it came off the bottom.
After about 5 years, Gerencer gave up fishing to work on land. He got a job as a fish buyer for a seafood wholesaler, working at what was then the new Portland Fish Exchange.
What exactly did you do as a fish buyer? What were your duties?
Inspecting fish, building relationships with people who had fish, and it wasn't just fish. I bought clams, I bought mussels, I bought oysters, sword tuna, billfish, sharks.
You began having a very close relationship with the Portland Fish Exchange, the auction house here on the waterfront. What were you doing?
Portland Fish Exchange was my baby. I loved it. It gave the fishermen power in the marketplace. I was a buyer there, but I eventually got on the board of directors, and I was 6 years as treasurer, 2 as chairman, and I loved the whole concept of the Portland Fish Auction.
You've also got experience on the regulatory side of the fishing industry. As you look back over the last 30 years, have the regulators helped or hurt the fishing industry in Maine?
Yes. Mostly it's been hurt because there's a lot fewer. When I started fishing, there were over 2,000 boats, closer to 2,500. Now there's less than 200 active fishing vessels. And the average size of the fleet was around 90 feet. Now it's 50. And we're landing a lot less fish. So the industry itself has taken a big hit. The fish stocks, however, are in pretty good shape. The species mix is not the same because we did deplete everything in the late 90s down to very low levels. And then we put in all these different restrictions as fishery managers to try to save the fish stocks, and they worked. The problem is getting boats back to work again. It's hard to, when you institute a closed area, it somehow becomes permanent, and it takes an act of God to open it back up again.
You write in the book that people who don't believe in climate change should look at what is happening in the Gulf of Maine, one of the fastest warming bodies of water in the world. What is happening out there?
Anybody who works on the water and has been on the water for a few decades knows it's different. An oyster that took 3 years to get that big can do it in 14 months now, because the Casco Bay will get to be 85 degrees in the summer now. And that's good for the oysters, but things are changing here. Is it bad or good? It's not great for some things, and it's better for others, but it's a real thing.
You've worn a lot of different hats in the business. One of them is a cook's hat. You've worked in restaurants cooking, and you're passionate about cooking fish. You've got one meal left. You get to have seafood. What would your dish be of choice?
I would pan-sear a blackback flounder, and then deglaze the pan with a little butter. And once it stopped talking to me, as the chef said, once it stopped sizzling, I'd put a few capers in there and some parsley and just a few drops of lemon, swirl that around and pour it on top of the flounder, and you've got a gourmet dish.
It's funny because we've done a lot of food stories here on 207, so I've asked a number of people, many people, what their dream meal would be. What would be your last meal? I've never had anyone say flounder. I think that's an interesting choice.
I was surprised by that answer as well. Also very surprised to see our friend Carrie in
Your
there
LTO?
in the picture. That
Chef?
was a good time. And I must say that him talking about being on a boat for 6 to 8 days out there fishing, I don't think I could do it without a nose plug. I think I would be too stinky for my
I think
liking.
that's a line of work that it's well that you stayed away from. Sam.
Exactly. Exactly.
Again, the name of Bill Gerencer's book is Working Waterfront: A Fish Tale.